Well, hello, everyone. I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our Center Court session on the full-time MBA program at the Kelley School of Business. That's at Indiana University. We have in the house John Hill, the newly named faculty chair of the MBA program. John has been teaching at the Kelley School for 10 years. In fact, only last night, he got off an online class on quantitative analysis. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, John. It's good to be here.
And congratulations on being named faculty chair of the MBA program.
Thank you. It's a privilege.
So John, tell us why someone should consider the full-time MBA experience at Kelley.
Yeah. So if I were to summarize in one word what our program represents, really what our school represents, it's just collaboration. It's a smaller program. We've got about 250, 300 students between the 2 years. But it's really a tight-knit community that's focused on experiential learning opportunities for students, a hands-on approach, really helping students to transition into the business world, largely from a liberal arts background.
And I've thought through the years, because I've been to Kelley quite a few times, that it's a really well-structured, well-thought-out program. And I say that because of all the different elements that are involved in it. The integrated core curriculum, which we should talk about, the experiential learning, which is, as you point out, a core part of the program, the academies, which basically help prepare and transition you into a new industry. Me Inc., the probably one of the best in class career development, professional development programs in the business school world, among many other things. Let's take the integrated core, because that's something that hits people right away, and it's quite different because you take the entire core curriculum and get one grade for it, which makes it kind of scary, I think.
Yeah, so it's a well-timed question, John, because my first task coming into the role of chair, I've actually redesigned the integrated core for next year.
Oh, cool. We're going to get a scoop here.
Yeah, we're going to get a scoop. So taking a lot of feedback from our students. It's a hallmark of our program is the students tell us what's working, what's not working, and we respond to it. It's the advantage of being, a smaller type program. So starting next year, our integrated core moves from 1 semester to a semester and a half. And what that allows us to do is to offer more lecture content in each subject, but have the students taking fewer subjects at one time, and addressing the fear of having one grade. With that, what we've done is split the core into 3 separate courses. So every 7 weeks, you get a new suite of courses with its own grade. So it's still integrated, still a combined grade for those 4 or 5 classes in that course, but giving the students a little more feedback early on. And also what we've discovered is if you do fewer classes at a time, not only is it a little easier on the students' bandwidth, yes, but it actually helps increase the integration, because the faculty have fewer classes to try to work together and pull together in terms of the content in the course.
Right. What is the advantage of an integrated core? Because some people may not realize what that really is.
I think the advantage of an integrated core is that you're put on teams and working together with students of different backgrounds, right? So sometimes students will come to me and say, well, why do I have to take marketing? I've worked in marketing before, right? Well, if it's integrated core, everyone takes everything: finance, marketing, ops, quantitative methods, communication, ethics, the whole bit, right? And so we've put the teams together in such a way that there is someone with a good quantitative background. There's some international experience on a team. There's some domestic experience on a team. There's some marketing experience. There's some, maybe some art or liberal arts experience, something a little more on the creative side of things. And so it's your first chance to work in a team where there are going to be times where you get to take the lead, and there are going to be times where you have to sit there and really absorb from your teammates what's going on, because it is brand new to you. And I can think of no way to introduce all these topics than to have a team support network doing it with you. And if we pull someone out of a subject because he had the expertise, we are robbing the rest of that team from the opportunity to learn from that student.
Plus, there's a level of faculty collaboration here that may not exist in programs that are not integrated in terms of their core, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just yesterday, I was working with our accounting faculty who teaches alongside me when I do my quantitative methods portion of the core, and looking at accounts receivable data that he can use to talk about accounting subjects. But I can also teach students how to analyze it analytically. We can share it with the operations faculty, and they can talk about what the operations are doing to impact that same balance sheet. So yes, it gives really that broad purview of how do you solve a business problem that has all of these different functional factors to consider.
Right. And then you have the academies, and the academies are kind of interesting to me because you sign up for them, and it's a whole portfolio of programming, right?
Yeah.
Describe what an academy is, how many you have, and in what topics.
Sure. So I actually was an academy director for about 5 years, so I have that in my portfolio as well. The academies are intended to bridge the gap between what you're learning in the classroom and what you're doing in your networking and career search. All right. So how do I apply the concepts that I'm learning intellectually with what I'm actually going to be doing day to day when I get my MBA? And so we have 6 academies in the first year. They're aligned functionally. So we've got a supply chain academy, a business marketing academy, consumer marketing academy, strategic finance, which is on the corporate side, investment banking, which is on the Wall Street side, and then also a consulting academy for strategic consulting. Now, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have students only in those majors, right? A student can be any major, but participate in a particular academy based on their career goals and the type of industry role they want to pursue. So those basically involve guest speakers that come in about every other Friday for the whole day. You meet just with your academy students and have guest speakers come in. We have an entire week halfway through the fall semester between those first and second core classes where the students can go out and visit industry. If you want to do supply chain, but you've never been in a factory, you need to get into a factory, right? And the academy is a great way to do that. And then we have in our second year some what we call industry specific or skill development academies. And these include our leadership academy, our life science plus academy, our high tech academy. I knew I was going to forget one, John.
Business analytics? No.
No, we got life science, high tech, leadership, entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurship academy.
There you go. Okay, that's right. And of course, I know you're director of that academy quite well. In fact, yes. And really, it's a really helpful kind of construct in an MBA program, I think, because it aligns your passions and your interests with the kinds of programming that will help you land a good job, right?
Yeah, and it also strengthens the student-to-student relationships, because now you're in a group of 20 students or 30 students instead of 150 students, and you get to know what their career goals are. And my favorite part of that role as a director was watching these students help each other in their career search.
Right. Yeah, and you find your tribe.
Yeah, we're not going to place 30 students in one role somewhere and they're all competing for it, right?
Right.
They're each kind of doing their own niche thing. And I see students, they have an interview, they come back and say, that's not really what I want to do. That's what he wants to do. All right. So now I'm going to connect that student with the person that just interviewed me and help them along. And that's really a rewarding experience to see.
Right. Absolutely. And tell me a little bit more about your experiential learning opportunities. What are you doing there?
Sure. So I would lump the academies in as part of that experiential learning opportunity, right? Out in the field. Part of what academies do is a project in the spring. So it's industry sponsored projects, often for an alumni at a company somewhere who graduated from that academy. They come back and say, here's a problem you need to work on. And so that experience allows the students in their first year to prepare themselves for their internship by doing a real world project, maybe in a field they've never worked in before. So that would be the first experiential learning opportunity. We also have international travel opportunities. Again, small project consulting opportunities. This year, we're going to Argentina, Botswana, and Greece.
Wow.
And we really focus on social enterprise, small business, NGO type clients, where the students can go there, engage in our project over the course of a week on site in the country, meet the client, have lots of meetings, come back and spend the second half of the semester working through the problem as a team and coming up with a solution that they can present to the client. We have something domestic that's similar. We call One Kelley, and that's an Indiana-focused project. Those project teams are undergraduates, but we use our MBA students as leaders of those teams. So it gives those students a leadership opportunity. And I really like that program because I think one of the underappreciated skills of an MBA is the ability as a generalist to lead a team of really good technical people.
Mm,
And so when you
sure.
get a group of undergraduates who are majoring in a field like finance, for instance, and they've had 2 years of electives, way more depth than an MBA would typically get. MBA has to learn how to manage a team that's doing stuff that they don't necessarily know how to do themselves, but still get that project moving forward. And at some point in their career, they're going to find themselves in that very situation.
Right. Absolutely. And then there's what I mentioned earlier, Me Inc., which is your personal development program.
Right.
Tell me what that is meant to do.
I think one of the things you got to do as an MBA student is take advantage of being on campus for 21 months. And we sort of get two types of students all the times that show up. The students on one end of the spectrum that are still trying to figure out really what they want to do. And I think it's really clear how a Me Inc. program helps them, right? It helps them with career exploration, understanding their personality, understanding their personal leadership style, those sort of things to help focus them. But I don't want to underestimate how important Me Inc. is to the other end of the spectrum. The student that comes in and says, I want to do X at this company forever.
Mm,
Okay, but if you're going to leave your job for 2 years, forfeit your pay, spend 2 years in class doing homework on the weekends, away from your family, you better be getting something out of this, right? So we encourage those students, broaden your horizons. Like, that's great. Maybe you'll end up there, but we're going to give you 3 weeks before you even step into class to talk to people and experience things you haven't thought about and really evaluate what else is out there. As long as I'm going to be investing 21 months of my life in the process, let's give myself the best opportunity to experience what my future might be.
yeah, that's really a good point. Absolutely. And Me Inc. is a 2 years worth of exercises and experiences, right?
Yeah, so it's heavily focused on that first 3 weeks before classes start, but we actually bring second years back into Me Inc., part of the leadership discussion, right? So one of the things we do at Me Inc. is teach them how to develop a case to analyze a business, which is a big part of business school, something they have to do for all their courses throughout their curriculum. So many of them have no idea how to analyze a business case. And so we bring the second years back in as part of Me Inc. to train those teams and coach them up on how to approach it. We have a case they have to analyze at the end of Me Inc. And we actually grade it. We don't give them a grade for it, but we grade it as if they had finished the core.
Huh?
And that means they get a lot of 3s out of 10s on subjects, right? But when they get through core and they do another case competition with the team, they can really see how they've grown and developed.
Yeah, that's terrific. So even though the MBA is a general management degree, it does evolve and it does change. And I think more currently, there are a number of topics that are being discussed more and more. One is sustainability, another is diversity and inclusion, another, of course, is business analytics. And then how can we not forget ChatGPT and artificial intelligence and machine learning? I wonder if you might just give us a brief overview of how your MBA program is addressing each of these very topical issues.
Sure. So we have a business analytics major. It's one of our 7 majors available to our students. And that major is actually integrated very well with the other majors. So within that business analytics major, you can choose to focus on supply chain analytics or finance analytics or marketing analytics. And each of those departments on campus provide the electives in those courses. So it's not just a general analytics major. We've got a year and a half of electives. So really focusing on how do you want to apply analytics in your particular career path. And that's our most popular major. All students will have 2 majors, but it is the most popular major for our students.
Wow, that's surprising to me. I mean, usually in most schools, finance is the number 1 major, right?
Right. Many or marketing.
Yeah.
And a lot of those students will do both. They'll do a finance and an analytics or a marketing and an analytics. The analytics is a big piece of the plan for many of our students.
Wow, that tells you a lot about the rise of analytics and its importance to employers.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've done a few things with diversity. We've integrated it in the core. We've tried a few things. We've tried have a diversity day. Now let's bring some speakers in and talk to the students about diversity issues. It's a way to do it. I don't think it works. It didn't really work well. It doesn't resonate with our students. What we found resonates with our students is they're in class, they're in my analytics class, they're in marketing, they're in finance, they're in accounting. Let's bring topics into those courses to talk about how diversity matters in that subject matter, right? So in my class, for example, analytics, I can bring the data in that demonstrates bias in some context, right? And then we can talk about what do we learn about diversity and inclusion based on the analytics we just used, right? It's the numbers, it's in the data, right? So things like that. So strategy class, same thing. There's a lot of diversity and inclusion issues involved in HR and strategy that can be brought in. So we've really started to take the approach of let's just embed that content in the coursework we're already doing. One of the changes that we have with the new core is we brought in the business ethics piece into the core itself. So that's a new subject that's required as part of the integrated core as well, which I think is also an important part of the discussion of inclusion and diversity.
True. And sustainability?
Yeah, so sustainability, again, has been sort of infused in the content, right? So operations has the ability to discuss sustainability in terms of manufacturing operations. We can talk about sustainability in terms of bottom line impact for an accounting class. So we don't have a major in sustainability at this point, but what we've done is basically challenge the faculty, particularly in some of the elective courses, to say this needs to be a topic that shows up on your syllabus so students can think about sustainability when they're thinking about your topic at large.
Right. Yeah. So you've embedded it in each of the courses, essentially. Right. And then what do you make of artificial intelligence and how it's going to change people's lives, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, we have a lot of discussion about artificial intelligence and ChatGPT in terms of coursework and student performance and behavior and that sort of thing. But I think from a business perspective, the power of artificial intelligence is integrating data, right? We went from a stage 15 years ago where the challenge is, where do I get the data? And then now the challenge is, I've got all this data, I have too much data, I don't know how to make sense of all of my data, right? And now I think where you talk about artificial intelligence, that's the answer to the question, how do I make sense of all this data? How do I integrate the data? So when we do our courses in business analytics here at Kelley, it's not just statistical models and methods. We have courses on where do you store your data and how do you access it? Right? How are you going to make decisions about what data you need to collect? How are you going to make decisions based on the analysis you just conducted? It's almost like a full cycle of how do you get the data? How do you store the data? How do you analyze the data? How do you make a decision based on the data? Okay, now what data do I need to store? What data do I collect? And we just keep going around that same circle over and over again.
Right. Yeah, and then the whole issue of how do you use ChatGPT in a teaching environment, or do you ban it? Do you allow students to use it and learn from it? What's your take on that?
My take is that banning it is a non-starter. In part practically, but what are we here for? We're here to educate students on how to be successful in the business world. So if we can teach them how to use that program or programs like it to be more successful, then I think we have an obligation as instructors to do that. So that means integrating ChatGPT in the curriculum where appropriate, showing them how it can aggregate data to help them solve a business problem. But it also provides an opportunity to show the shortcomings. I mean, it's amazing how many times ChatGPT will reference a non-existing source. So if you walk into a presentation with the executive director and you present something based on your ChatGPT analysis, that's great. But if he goes to find that source and he can't find it anywhere, that's not so great. So part of teaching it is also teaching the limitations.
Yeah, that's really true. And, with the answers on artificial intelligence, there is no attribution, there's no source material whatsoever. So it could be very easily mislead you, essentially, for sure. One of the things I like to do, John, when I visit a campus is to go out with students and have a beer with them. And what I inevitably ask is this question. Tell me 3 things about the program that will resonate with you long after you graduate from it. What do you think your students would tell me?
So I think the first thing that sticks with them long after is the network. It's the connection they have with their students. And I remember 10 years ago when I started at Kelley, listening to Dean Kesner give a speech at an induction ceremony, I think it was, right? And she mentioned to the students, 100,000 living alumni, right? And I, in my normal cynical self, kind of sat there and said, well, okay, but how many of them are MBA alumni, right? Because I'm thinking, MBA program perspective.
Sure.
But it didn't take me long here to realize that was a stupid question, because it didn't matter. I can reach out to my Kelley Direct alumni, to my undergraduate alumni, to alumni from any of our one-year master's programs, and they are ready to help out a student in the MBA program. And the MBA program alumni are ready to help out any student here on campus from another program. So it truly is, now it's 127,000 living alumni, and it's the full set of alumni that is that network that the students leave with. So I think that is the first thing I would list. The second thing I would list is the faculty care, right? The faculty do not just appear in the classroom and then leave the classroom, right? How many times I've heard a student say, I got a job because a faculty made a connection in their professional network and helped me reach that person, right? Our faculty are at the tailgates on Saturday morning at the football games, right? Our faculty are also at the restaurant having a beer with the students, finding out what they think about the program, right? Our faculty are in the lobby holding their office hours outside the core classrooms just so they can interact with more students instead of making the student decide if they want to walk all the way across the building to their office, right? So we really emphasize in our program that if you're teaching, particularly if you're teaching in the core, that you have a connection and a relationship with these students that extends beyond the classroom. And I think the students really resonates with the students, and the students really, really appreciate that. So that would be the second thing I would say. And then the third thing I'd say is just there's the connection to the school even after they're gone. So it's so easy to get a speaker to come back. Like when I started doing academy director for the supply chain academy, I thought to myself, how am I going to find speakers? How am I going to find people to go visit? What am I going to do with all this work? No problem, right? I mean, I could contact anyone. Like, yeah, we'll host you. We'll find a dinner for you. We'll introduce you to our COO. I'll come to campus next week and I'll talk for a half an hour on whatever topic you want me to talk on. So there's something I think that is very powerful about how eager the alumni are to come back and give back to the students that are here currently.
Yeah, those are three great ones. Now, John, what's Bloomington, Indiana like? Because a lot of people, they may know New York, they may know Chicago, they may know San Francisco, but they may not know Bloomington, Indiana. What can you tell them about what it's like to live there for 2 years and go to school?
Yeah, it's not necessarily well known if you haven't been here, right? One of the things that we really emphasize when we're recruiting students is come visit Bloomington, Indiana, so you can see it, right? It is your classic stereotypical college town. It revolves around the university. It's a ghost town right now because all the students left, right? And so what does that mean? Well, some students say, well, what am I going to do? The thing about being in a college town is you make your own activities. You create your own experience, right? Broadway is not down the road. Indianapolis isn't too far away. And there's plenty of stuff on campus at IU Auditorium, plenty of cultural events that happen locally. And what you get in a small town is the students interact all weekend, right? You leave class on Friday and you go hang out somewhere Friday night, and maybe you sleep in a little bit on Saturday, but then Saturday late morning, you're at the tailgate with everyone again. I mean, you've got to like each other because you're going to see each other 7 days a week, but we lean into that here, right? We're not going to make excuses for the fact that we have to create our own community. We love creating our own community. And at the end of the day, I was talking with one of our students, and I'll leave the names out to protect the innocent, but he had an internship last summer, and it was him and two other students. And these two other students went to a different, very, very good business school, and they didn't know each other. They showed up, and he's like, that would never happen at Kelley. Like, there's no way you could show up. You can't show up in the same town as someone and not have them see you there, right? Because that's the connection you have with every student here. So It's a small town, but there's lots going on. The basketball team is back. I'm happy about that. And lots of cultural activities in town. And I mean, the airport, it's a 10-minute walk through security and you're on that plane. So if you want to go somewhere, let's go together.
That's great. John, let me ask you a more general question. How do you see graduate business education evolving over the next 5 years? See any immediate changes or things in the horizon that you would expect to have happen?
Yeah, so I think to answer that question, we've got to think about where graduate business education has come from, particularly in the MBA space, right? So if we go back 30 years, I know I don't look like I can go back 30 years, but I can go back 30 years. Students got their liberal arts education, undergraduate, then they went into a business school so they can get a corporate career. And that's how it worked. There weren't really undergraduate business programs per se at that time. 20, 15 years ago, maybe things started to shift a bit. Advent of rankings incentivized things like how much money do your graduates make straight out of school? How much experience do your students have before they get there? Right? This is classic. We measure what's easy to measure. And so what does that incentivize? It incentivizes students to behave, or not students, schools to behave differently. Well, students as well, but schools then say, okay, well, I've got to be pulling students out of corporate America instead of out of undergraduate institutions. And so that led to sort of this shift where the career path changed. Students, undergraduate liberal arts, then industry or something to do for a few years before they could go to business school, because that's the only way to get in. The students had no recourse other than to go along with the show. What do we have now? We have choice for students, right? I can go straight into a 1-year master's program now out of an undergraduate liberal arts degree. I can go to an online program if I want to, and depending on the online program, they may or may not require me to have industry experience. So students have a preference for getting the degree sooner and getting the degree quicker.
Right.
And so at the same time, employers, I think, are conditioned to expect the MBA student to have the work experience. And so that these two things are now at odds with each other. And I don't know it's entirely clear how it's going to shake out, right? Are the students going to be able to convince the employers to hire them out of a 1-year program? Right? In which case that drastically changes how a 2-year MBA program looks. Okay. We've basically gone back 30 years and replaced a 2-year MBA with a 1-year MBA. Okay. Or are the students not going to be able to be placed out of that program because they don't have the qualifications of a 2-year MBA, whether it's an in-resident or online 2-year MBA? And that market starts to dry up and doesn't get going. And I think it's early enough in that market, we're not really sure, right? So I'm answering your question with another question, John, which is what professors do all the time, right? And that is, I want to see how it shakes out between the employer expectation and the student desire, right? Because the student is the customer and the employer is also my customer, right? I've got two customers with two different desires. And I'm fortunate to work at a business school that has lots of programs and caters to all of these niches, right? So, as a school, we're almost agnostic about how it goes. We are here to educate business students in whatever form we have to educate them. Okay? But I think it's going to be interesting in the next 5 years to see what that shakeout is. And the end result of that shakeout is going to impact sort of what is the 2-year in residential MBA program look like? What is the niche? I feel strongly that there's a difference between the student that should be in an online program and the student that should be in an in-resident program. Particularly around what their background is pre-business school, right? So when I'm recruiting students, I am spending a lot more time recruiting students with a liberal arts background, the arts as a good pathway. I feel like if you're in an engineering role, I mean, we have lots of engineers in our program too, but I can certainly understand why they might want to go the Kelley direct route, right? And it's a lot more lost pay if they're going to be on for 2 years, right? So we've got to think strategically about where that is, and we've got to do a better job, not Kelley necessarily just Kelley, but as an industry, of helping students understand those differences and helping to provide them the direction so they make a choice that's going to benefit their career. It's like, I teach in the online program, and every once in a while I see a student like, man, you really would have benefited from that 1-year experience, 2-year experience with the internship for what you're trying to do. And honestly, sometimes I see a student in my program like, man, you gave up a lot. You probably could have gotten KD if you wanted to here, right? So I think our obligation as a school, though, is not to a program. It's to the student and their experience, and to our employers, and making sure we're giving the right programming to the right students so their career goals can be met.
Yeah, and the option choices are massive today in terms of specialty master's programs, the 1 versus 2 year, the online versus on campus and in person, the executive MBA, the part-time traditional evening program. I mean, the options are remarkable, and the flexibility has really been built in to meet the needs and the desires of students and ultimately employers. So, John, what's your best advice for those looking to pursue an MBA at this moment?
Yeah, I love this question. You're going to give up potentially 2 years of your life to go do a business degree, right? It's lost salary, it's lost time, it might involve traveling somewhere, right? So there's lots of places you can go for advice. Your family, your coworkers, your manager, poets and quant is great for advice, right? But I would say to that prospective MBA student, remember, you're the one with the skin in the game, right? You're the one that has to do the work. You're the one that has to be on campus potentially for 2 years in an in-residence program. You're the one whose career is riding on this choice and who needs that network to make this decision. So, I don't know, maybe with Chat GPT we can do this, but at this point, I haven't seen the personalized ranking for you anywhere, right? They're aggregate, and anyone who gives you advice as an individual, they're bringing their perspective, and that's valuable, but it's their perspective. So my advice to a potential student is get in the car, get on a plane, and go visit a school, right? Talk to the faculty, talk to the students, talk to the staff, talk to the alumni, find out what that culture is in that program. Because you need to find a program that fits you. It might be Kelley, it might not be, and it's not for everyone, but it's got to work for you. And so your goal really should be, I am going to create the top 10 business schools for, put your name in the blank. And that's going to have to be involving going and visiting, talking to people, finding out who you're going to work with, finding out what the strengths of that program are. We have a great marketing department here, so does every school, right? And we tell you the things we're proudest of, and so does every other school, right? But what I tell students is, whether it's the advertising you get from a business school or the ranking you're looking up, remember that that ranking is based on a certain set of priorities, and the advertising assumes a certain set of priorities. And those rankings and those advertisings are only as good as whether or not those priorities align with your priorities. Right? So you've got to figure out what you're trying to get out of that experience. And the only way to do that, I think, John, is in person.
Yeah, I agree. Do the homework, visit, as you mentioned, talk with both students, attend the classroom, be a fly on the wall, spend a little time with faculty in a discipline that you're interested in pursuing. And that is really how you're going to pick the best school. Not by going on a list and looking at what schools ranked 15 or 20 or 5 or whatever. And those are guideposts that just start you thinking about the landscape, but a little more than that, really. Well, John, it's been a pleasure to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for your insights and perspectives. Really enjoyed it. And I really think we got to a lot of nitty-gritty things about the Kelley experience on campus in an MBA program that sometimes they get overlooked in the bigger picture. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. You've been listening to our conversation with John Hill, the newly named faculty chair of the Kelley MBA program. We'll see you around. Thanks for watching.